So a couple weekends ago, we went to a small family reunion on my husband's side of the family. And while we were there, I could see out the window that there was this beautiful apple tree that I could see, and it had these bright red apples all over it. And we walked out there to look at this apple tree, and it was just full of beautiful apples all over it. So later on that evening, they actually let a bunch of us take some of these apples home, and I thought that was really nice of them to do that. Well, later on, whenever I did my sweet potato harvest, I actually weighed out how many apples we actually got from them, and it ended up being 37 pounds, which was amazing. That's quite a bit of apples. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to can up some apple pie filling this year. So it was a perfect thing that they gave us all these apples, and I just knew right then I wanted to make apple pie filling because I love making pies in the fall and winter. So the problem that I was running into was I couldn't find any clear gel anywhere. I went to a few stores and couldn't find any, and I just wasn't about to drive to another town trying to find this clear gel. And I got online to look, and I think the cheapest thing that I found was $15, or it was $11 and you had to pay shipping, and it just wasn't worth it to me to be ordering something online like that. So what I decided was I was just going to go ahead and freeze it, because I have just enough freezer space, and that's just what I ended up doing, and it's perfectly fine. Hopefully next year I can find some clear gel and can up some apple pie filling from our own tree next year. So I started out by just peeling all of the apples and coring them with my apple peeler. Now I love how my apple peeler peels all these apples and how thin they are, because I just think they're perfect for my pies and the texture and everything. So as soon as I peeled them, I put them straight into a lemon water, just so they don't turn brown. And I keep them in that lemon water until I have the amount that I need. Then after I get just about everything that I need, I end up weighing all of them, making sure that I am roughly around what the recipe calls for. And then I end up mixing up the filling part separately. So I got out my big 20-quart stock pot, and I knew I was going to have to make a double batch. That's why I got this really big pot out. So I took 6 pounds of apples, 2 cups of sugar, 1/4 of a cup of flour, 1.5 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Now I didn't do too much of lemon juice because they were already sitting in lemon juice water. So I let them sit in the pot for 30 minutes after I mixed everything together. So again, I doubled my recipe because I had so many apples that I wanted to make as much filling as possible. I found it way easier mixing everything on the ground because I'm a little short and it was a little hard for me to stir the double batch that I had. So after 30 minutes of the last batch that I mixed in, I cooked them over medium heat. Now this took a while since it was a double batch. I just sat by the pot stirring, making sure nothing was going to burn. When it started to look thickened, I removed the pot and I ladled them into these freezer containers. Now these freezer containers are really handy to have. I made sure to leave about 1-inch headspace so that they had room to expand. Then I add the lids on and I let them cool completely at room temperature before I put them into a freezer. Now I think next time I will use brown sugar instead of white sugar, just because I like the taste of brown sugar. Now these 2 batches gave me a total of 10 containers to freeze. So after making the filling, I ended up saving all the apple scraps to make apple cider vinegar. It's really easy to make. It's just 3 ingredients. It's apple scraps, water, and sugar. But honestly, you don't really need the sugar unless you want to speed up the process more. The sugar just provides the bacteria to feed on, and apples already contain enough sugar, so you don't really need the sugar. But I ended up using 4 tablespoons of cane sugar with 1 cup of warm water, and I mixed it in really well to dissolve the sugar. Then I added in the apple scraps about 3/4 full, and then I filled the rest with non-chlorinated water in this half-gallon jars. So I ended up adding way too many apple scraps in the half-gallon jars. So I removed some the next day and added them into a smaller jar. But here, after the jars were filled, you can either add something like weights to weigh down the apples into the water. But I just ended up stirring mine every day just because I didn't want mold forming on the surface where the apples were out of the water. Then I covered them with a coffee filter and rubber band just to keep out anything from getting into the jar, like fruit flies. And you want to make sure that the jar can breathe so the gases won't build up inside of the jar. I just kept the jars on my counter just because it's only for 2 to 3 weeks for the first ferment. So after 2 to 3 weeks and stirring them every day, I will strain them and then I'll discard the apple scraps. Then I'll continue using coffee filters and then I'll start the second ferment. But this time I will put them in a cool, dark place for 4 to 6 weeks. Then I'll place regular lids on the jars after the second ferment is over, and then that's when you can start using the vinegar. And if it looks cloudy with stuff in it, that just means it has a good strain of bacteria and yeast, and that is called the mother. And I like to mention, whenever you're doing the first ferment, and if you start seeing bubbles forming, that's a really good sign and that everything is going really great. So I have a terrible time every time that I try to ferment something like sourdough starter, and making this apple cider vinegar has brought in so many fruit flies, and I have tried everything to try to get rid of these fruit flies, and I finally found something that really works really good. I ordered these little strips. It has a front and back where you can peel off each side, and it's really sticky. It's a yellow color. And I don't know what it is about this, but I just lay the sticky side up on top of my apple cider vinegar, and it has collected I don't know how many fruit flies in just 3 days. And after 3 days, I mean, I've probably seen one here and there, but after the 3 days, I honestly have not really seen fruit flies flying around because they'll just land on that paper, that sticky paper, and just stick to it. But I appreciate you all watching, and I'm going to link some things down in the description below this video on the stuff that I have ordered, like the freezer containers, the fruit fly sticky pads. So if you guys want to look down in the link below, I will post that just so you guys can find that. But I really appreciate you guys watching this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.